LinkedIn fam, or possibly YouTube or Facebook. I am Tegan Bartos, and today we are digging into a conversation that is long overdue. What really moves the needle in your career? We are cutting through myths, politics, hustle, and getting to the truth with someone who has been in the rooms where promotion decisions get made. Joining me is Courtney O'Connell, leadership strategist, executive coach, blah, blah, and founder of The Promoted. She has spent over 25 years inside of corporate leadership, including an SVP of the head of HR for a Fortune 500 company, and still to this day does fractional work. So she is in the know. She knows exactly what gets people seen, promoted, and fulfilled without burnout or being overlooked. So without further ado, Courtney, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hello, I am here with the tea. I am so excited. Let's get into it.
Awesome. Okay, so you have sat in the rooms where promotion decisions get made.
Yeah.
What is one truth about these conversations that would shock most people who are trying to break into a senior level leadership or executive level role?
Yeah. So here's what shocks my clients who are, in the corporate space, middle management to pre-exec, really trying to break into that executive rank. And what the most shocking thing is that it's not about your hard work, and it's actually not about your execution. Meaning your team stats could be above everyone else's, and yet that is not the ticket to promotion. And so many people feel like if I'm the highest performer and my stats are the best and I am heads down and working my tail off all the time, it's going to get noticed and I'm going to be tapped. And I tell you, not only from my own experience climbing the ladder, but my experience sitting in hundreds of rooms where we were discussing talent and deciding who was going to get that promotion. It's not part of the equation. I shouldn't say it's not part of the equation. It's the ticket to entry, right? So we're assuming you're all delivering, right? But your stats being slightly above your peer is not part of what is going to go into the discussion about your promotion.
That is the same conversation that I have to have with my job seeker clients because they think that their job is safe because their stats are good.
Yeah.
That's expected.
Yeah.
Okay, so now that we all know that we feel like we've been lied to about everything we've been taught about how to get promoted and advanced as a leader, what's the truth?
Yeah. So the truth is, it's about your presence. It's about your positioning. It's about how people view you and your competence. And the really interesting fact of the matter is that there is a true halo effect around confident people, because in our brains, we see somebody who's confident and we assume that they're competent. And we all know that that's not necessarily the case. We've all worked for bosses who, weren't necessarily, the strongest or the smartest at the table, but they were effective because of that confidence. And so that's really, at the end of the day, what it's about. We are going to assume that you're a strong performer, right? I mean, we're not here to help coach you on performing better in your role. But at the end of the day, what we're here to do is help you position yourself in a way that's powerful, intentional, clear, and in a way that makes you the undeniable next choice for that leadership team, for recognition, for promotion, whatever it is that you are after.
So I think we probably both worked with people who think they're doing everything right, but they still feel invisible. So what is it that people are missing when they think that they're doing everything you just said?
Yeah. Yeah. So and this happens so often. And this is, the general angst out there, right? I'm doing really well. Why am I not breaking through? And the question you have to ask yourself is not, what can I do to get ahead? It's, how do I need to be seen to get ahead? And it's a very different question, right? Because again, here we're assuming that you're doing your job. And a lot of my clients get feedback from their boss, like, just keep doing what you're doing. You're doing great. Keep doing what you're doing. That's a red flag, right? So I mean, you need to really ask yourself, how do I need to be seen? How do I think my boss is viewing me? What would my boss say about me? And if I can't clearly articulate what my boss would say about me, I'm not doing a good job of positioning myself with intentionality. And so that is what I tell people who feel stuck is just take a breath, look at the landscape and decide, how do I want to be seen first, right? So this is why we always kind of start with this inner work because you have to be the most authentic version of yourself, right? Otherwise, your energy is going to deceive you every single time if you are trying to be somebody else. So you really have to get very clear on who am I? What are my values? What do I stand for? What do I no longer accept? Right. So we've all been in jobs or company cultures or whatever it might be, where it just was a bit of a rub. And I've been in that situation too. And so we need to get clear on those things and then decide what's my brand? What's my legacy? How do I need to be seen? And that's where the shift happens.
You are speaking my love language and
Yeah.
everything that you're talking about. But I love that you help people get promoted because so often I'm talking to the people who are like, F this, I'm leaving because I didn't get what I wanted.
Yeah.
And then they go to the next company and they find that they're in this hamster wheel because the same
Yeah.
thing happens.
Yeah.
And if you can't figure out how to get promoted from within, then chances are it's going to be really difficult to do that at the next company too. And you talk about this inner work of leadership.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What does that actually look like before someone even gets the title? Like, what
Yeah.
is one self-sabotaging pattern that you see that holds people back?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's so funny. It makes me think of that quote, wherever I go, there I am, right? Like you can change as many companies as you want to. And at the end of the day, you are the one who's still showing up, expecting that your situation will change because of your environment. And 9 times out of 10, it's self-perpetuated. And so we have to take radical accountability, really decide what's happening around me. What do I not like about what's happening around me? What do I wish was different? And identify that, but then also really decide, what do I want? What am I after? I've worked with a lot of executives, especially senior executives who want to break into the C-suite. And what they don't realize is that job is very different than the job you're doing. It might be one title ahead, but the kind of work you're going to be doing, the expectations, now the political area, arena that you're playing in, and they don't really understand that's not what I want, right? They're just really looking at the trajectory of the titles, and it seems like that's the next thing I should be going for. But if you don't really want it, right? The authenticity that you are going to show up and try to convince your boss that you're the right person for the role, it's never going to be there. So we really have to start with, what do I stand for? What do I really want and why? What am I excellent at? What have people told me that I'm great at? How can I, parlay that into more of an intentional brand? And then decide, in what environment does this make sense? Do I see myself being able to succeed here? And the answer might be no. And listen, I'm a former head of HR, so I know a lot of CHROs and head of HRs don't like to hear that. But I've switched teams now, right? So now I work with individual leaders because having come from the inside, I know what the conversations are. And you won't be on the discussion table if you're playing a game that you actually don't want to be playing. So it's in your best interest to really get clear on, what do I want? Why do I want it? What lights me up? How can I be the most clear, sharp, focused version of myself? Because then when I show up, that's where the confidence comes in. There's that halo, right? So people are going to start taking you really in a different way than you might have been positioned before. And that makes all the difference. And there's a lot of physicality to this. We hear about the X factor, right? We've all heard about that. And it's like, well, what the hell is that? How do I get the X factor, right? Charisma. Okay, well, I don't know what that is. And I work with a lot of people who are naturally lower energy, right? Who think I'm never going to have charisma because I'm not that high energy, showy kind of person. And so we work on debunking that, right? If that high energy, showy person is not you authentically, then that's not your version of charisma. But
Introverts can be executive leaders too.
absolutely. And let me tell you, some of the most impressive leaders that I have worked with are introverts. And this is an interesting group because when they speak up, everybody gets quiet and listens.
Yeah.
And again, right, because that is that executive presence. We know that this person, they've got really important things to say. And they have built, their brand on, I am going to bring value to the table. I'm going to say it and be softer about my approach. And because their charisma has a different brand, people understand it, right? So this is where we talk about these unwritten quote rules that can be learned. Look, at the end of the day, the corporate game isn't fair, right? Like this isn't, a meritocracy. Like not everybody wins here. You have to understand what the expectations are. What are those stakeholders and decision makers looking for? What are they really talking about? And then once you understand that and you can be more intentional, then that's where things shift. Things start working faster. You're getting recognized in ways that you haven't in the past. And if a promotion is what you're after, we're going to help you get that. But again, it might not be in this company because this company might not be the right environment for you after we start to peel that onion back on who are you and what do you really want.
I love that you start with clarity because I think clarity is so important because then how else can you be intentional about how you move forward?
Yeah.
And when you were talking about navigating that inner clarity and what you're good at, understanding that one level is very different than the next. An individual contributor, their biggest struggles then becoming a manager is, okay, how do I delegate? But then going from a senior level leader into the C-suite, having to understand the politics, like you said, as well as the long-term strategic vision. And if you're in a publicly traded organization, board priorities that may not align with yours. I remember I was recruiting for a CFO and he's like, I really want this. I know if I could lead the strategy, I would be able to make something incredible happen. And it's like, well, this ain't the role for you because the board up there, they're the ones that are ultimately going to be telling you what you can do.
Yeah.
You just got to figure out how to make it happen. And so there's lots of misconceptions about organizational size, structure, who does what, who plays well in the sandbox. And that can be tricky to navigate. So I'm curious, was there a moment in your career where you realized that the traditional rules that we think happen when climbing this ladder actually worked a little differently?
Yeah. So there was, and earlier in my career, I was with a company because I got a great offer with the title that I wanted, and it was, again, it was the ego. It was an ego-driven career move. We're all guilty of it, right? It feels great to have the title and the position and the money, and it became very evident to me, within that first year, this is not the right culture for me. Right. There was nothing wrong with that organization. I mean, in fact, it's one of the top performing, right? Like really impressive, amazing people, smart, amazing people. But it was restrictive decision making. There was limited creative, ability to really think outside of the box. I learned about myself after that job and after having that experience that to me felt soul sucking, right? There was nothing wrong with it. Everyone around me was happy, but I'm like, God, I don't like this. I'm not happy. And I couldn't figure out why until I did. And it clicked. One of my core values that I learned about myself is freedom. Right? Not that like I just want to lay on a beach all day, but freedom in that I need to have latitude to be able to think, to make decisions, like understand at what point I need to raise my flag and say, hey, boss, can I do it? Right. But like, I need to know I've got some runway of decision making. That is
I'm a big believer in asking for forgiveness later. So me and you might be on the same wavelength.
Yeah, but you have to know where that's safe, right? Because sometimes
100%.
like the judgment's important there. But that was a huge lesson for me in we and Tegan, for your, for your audience, right? We have to be really good about interviewing companies. We spend so much time, and look, this goes for internal opportunities as well. We spend so much time trying to make ourselves impressive, trying to make ourselves the pick me, right? This is, I should be selected for this. And we forget to ask the questions
Yeah.
that are really important to know, is this marriage going to work? Like, if you give me the job and the money's great, and I'll tell you, every single time the money will not matter if it's
Yep.
not the right fit, right? I don't care if it's internal, external, if it's not the right fit. And this is why, before continuing to, bang the wall against, like, I have to get that promotion, it's like, let's get really clear. So we always start with clarity. We then move to confidence. And I'll tell you, especially corporate leaders, none of us really believe we have a confidence issue, right? There's a reason why we, get to a certain point in our career, right? Because we feel like we've got confidence. But when you start to feel stuck, a lot of times it's clarity and it's confidence. I know we don't like to hear it, but that's really ultimately what it comes down to. And then we go to visibility, because once we're clear on that, we know what we have to offer, and that automatically instills the confidence. Now it's time to go out and get visible. And another, roadblock that I find a lot of my clients have is when we talk about visibility, they think, ugh, it's like a used car salesman. I don't want to do it. It's so self-promotion is just so inauthentic and, just gross, right? We have to get past that.
Yeah.
And really look at it in a very different lens, because this is not inauthentic visibility. Now, if I was saying, go and just tell them that you have your MBA from Harvard and that, you're a, Deloitte alum, right? That's gross and slimy, right? So, like, yes, you should feel horrible doing that. This is about really getting very clear on, like, these are all of the wonderful things I'm bringing to the table. And when I'm in an elevator with a stakeholder, I am crystal clear on what I want that person to know about me and how I want them to remember me. And that's what it's about.
We have a lot of similarities in helping support clients, which is awesome. For those of you who are tuning in, me and Courtney have a mutual connection who we both adore, but we've never actually chatted about like our individual programs or how we support or coach clients. So the synergy here is pretty neat, and I think it's because it's what actually, well, it's what works, right? Like, if you're not clear on what your goals are, how can anyone mentor you? How can anybody sponsor you? And then if you don't have the visibility, both internally and externally, right? Because you can't just have visibility internally, because there's going to be external candidates coming for that same job. And how do you position yourself as being a better fit for it than someone coming in on the outside who maybe has some fresh perspective? And then the visibility part of how do you get that externally, and when a lot of people are in that mindset of, like, oh, it's sleazy. Thought leadership isn't sleazy. Thought leadership inspires. You're giving.
Yeah.
And when you help other people rise, or when you help bring clarity to your industry or to your niche, it's a way to give back on a greater scale. And so I understand where your clients would feel that way.
Yeah.
And also, like, well, just that quick mindset reframe, and then all of a sudden you get to do something really powerful. And that's where I see confidence come in, because then when you try to put yourself out there externally, that's when imposter syndrome kicks in, and all of this, I'm not sure what to say, and I don't want to be out there like that. I want to stay invisible.
Yeah.
And as a service to you, your career, your industry.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know we're coming up close to time. So what else, for anybody tuning in now or catching this on replay, what else do you really want someone to know? Like, if you had one thing to tell them about them being ready to get them feeling finally like, yep, I put in the work, I'm ready to get this promotion, but I feel stuck. What is
Mhm.
one powerful reframe or action you
Yeah.
can take right now to feel empowered to take bold action moving forward?
Yeah. I'm going to give two. And I'll be quick. I'm going to do these. I'm going to do these bite size. So the first one, you have to understand that your boss likely is not watching everything that you're doing, right? Your boss is also incredibly busy. Your boss is also thinking about his or her career. And so is not thinking about you every day and doesn't, you can never bank on your boss noticing someday how hard I'm working and how good I'm doing. So we have to just debunk the expectation that your boss is going to notice someday. 90% chance they won't, right? If you work for the 10%, like amazing, never leave, right? That person's phenomenal, but they're likely not watching. So you have to take matters into your own hands. And there are very gentle, but firm ways to do this, right? In your one-on-ones. If your boss is saying, yeah, just keep doing what you're doing great, take accountability for really kind of, opening that up. So, hey, boss, I'd really love to talk about my career. These are some directions that I'd love to take. Next week, can I pick your brain on this? I have some specific questions, right? Like, there is nothing wrong with that. And your boss will likely appreciate it because usually your boss wants to see you succeed, right? Like, they don't want you to be miserable and they don't want to hold you down, but you're not their priority. Okay. So you've got to just take the reins of your own career and have the conversation and lead it. The second thing is, and Tegan, for your job seekers as well, you have to remember that getting a job or getting a promotion, right, which is essentially getting the job, it's a risk, right? So the hiring manager is taking a risk on you. Okay. Because if you don't work out, we all know the stats around the cost of retention, et cetera, et cetera. And just like the ricochet impact on the broader teams. So you have to actually think about, how do I de-risk the decision to pick me? Okay. So how do I de-risk that? You have to really understand what's important to this team of decision makers, right? So again, this is where you're reading and asking questions and you're understanding, what are the priorities? What are the risks? What are the threats? And so the way you de-risk the decision to pick me for whatever the recognition is that you want is by very mindfully showing how I can help you in this plight that you're on. And therefore, the risk of hiring me is a little lower than the next guy who didn't spend as much thoughtful time talking about the risk and how I can help do that. So if you're feeling stuck, take a deep breath and shake it off. It's normal. Okay. Don't beat yourself up. I spent a lot of time beating myself up when I felt stuck until I got to the other end and thought, gosh, that was a waste of energy on my part. So just, shake it off, take a walk around the block, reset your mind and your energy, and then think about, what can you do? There's always something you can do. We talk a lot about radical accountability. So think to yourself, if I had all the guts in the world, what are the conversations that I would have? What are the questions I would ask? And then decide, how can I get comfortable taking that first step?
I love, love, love that advice. So many people don't have one-on-ones, like
Yeah.
career development one-on-ones with their
Mhm.
leader. And I'm like,
Yeah.
you only talk about the projects you're working on? Like,
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
one way to do this is to create a SWOT analysis for yourself and then ask your boss for a one-on-one and then say, hey, what do you see that I'm missing on? And then from there, create a plan on how to have stretch assignments or whatever so they can start seeing you in that light. Oh
Yeah.
man, there's so
Make it easy. Yeah, you've got to make it easy. Too many bosses don't have great agendas for their
yeah.
one-on-ones. Bring one, right? Like, I have a
Yes.
lot of in fact, I have a client now who doesn't have a great, structure for the one-on-ones. Like, here's one to get
Yes.
started, right? And like, when you're creating it, now you can really get specific on what you need. So I can
Managing up.
and speaking as a former manager, I appreciated that when people would say to me, here's what I need from you. It's
Yes.
like, thank you, because I want to do this for you and I didn't know it's what you needed.
Yep.
So,
Yep. And how many people don't give their bosses the benefit of the doubt and don't understand truly how busy they are?
yeah.
And they're not just there to manage people, they have accountabilities too. And so
Mhm.
being able to help guide your own development is really important.
Yeah.
So we've got time for one more question. And so I would love to ask this one. What do you wish more leaders understood about themselves before they started chasing that next promotion?
Oh gosh, that's such a big one. Okay. Okay. So I wish that every leader better understood themselves in terms of how they're perceived. Okay. So I'm a big proponent of the DISC assessment, DISC. If you haven't heard of it, Google it. There are free DISC assessments online. I love to start with this because we have to understand how people might be perceiving us so that we can be more influential in our communication. And so too many leaders just never even think about who I am, how I communicate, what my DNA is, not because you need to change it, but because you need to understand how you're perceived so that you can be more influential in the ask and the positioning. So that is the kind of like, I guess, foundational level. You have to understand yourself and where you're naturally strong, where you've got to fill some gaps, and you have to do that intentionally. um Otherwise you just can't keep bulldozing your way through your career and expect paths to open up for you. It just doesn't happen.
I think using a career assessment is such a great starting point because it's so hard to read the label when you're inside the jar. And then
Love
you
that
get this
saying.
assessment back and you're like, yes, I agree with that. I just didn't know how to articulate that before.
Yep.
Our brain, the way it's developed is analytical thought is in a different section than our feelings. And that's where that
Yes.
gut feeling comes in is it's so
Hmm.
hard to articulate sometimes because we have to use two different parts of our brain. And so
Hmm.
having a third party, like a coach like you, Courtney, or
Hmm.
a DISC assessment can
Hmm.
be so helpful. So
Yeah.
I want to be mindful of your time, but I'm really excited for everybody tuning in now or catching this on replay. For sure, connect with Courtney. She is amazing, and she has an amazing guide on your website. Right? It's like
Yes.
um, 10 10 ways to fast track your career. And so
Yeah.
definitely get this. I will drop it in the comments. Courtney, thank you so much for joining today. For all of those that are tuning in or catching the replay, make sure you drop hashtag replay so we can reach out with you. And then next week, I will be on talking about landing a job in the UK, which I don't know much about. And so I'm really excited for that too. So Courtney, thank you. And for everybody
Thank you.
let me talk to you guys later. For those of you who are in the States, happy Memorial Day. For those of you who served, thank you for your sacrifice. Those who have lost loved ones through their time in service, my thoughts are especially with you this weekend.